In many of your favorite stories of all time, there exist moments that can change the trajectory of the entire series. Whether it be a catalyst that changes a main character and how they act, or it might have been a plot twist that changed a show forever. While I think most of these big moments can come down to hype and aura, I think My Hero Academia has always handled its big moments differently. And it's due to its brilliant character writing that we're able to get these almost poetic-like sequences that deepen our connection with the series. It's a show that's always been delicate with the way it handles its touchy subjects, most of the time invisible to the average watcher. This can be represented by literary devices like symbolism, parallels, or deep metaphors, stuff people usually wouldn't find unless they're observant. Something I always call back on when watching the show is the way it uses subtlety to represent a bigger picture. It could be the usage of weather to show how a power system has come full circle, or how the power of a villain is an extension of someone's body and they can't help the way they've turned out. Whatever example you've found, it usually provides extra depth in ways you've never expected. And I think My Hero's last season shows us this with its main two characters. What's up internet, I'm Nikando, and today I want to talk about how there won't be any characters like Deku and Bakugo ever again. So if you haven't heard, the final season of My Hero Academia just finished, and man, this season was jaw-dropping. But it's not just because of its Vincent Chancer levels of animation, but rather it implements a lot of these poetic subtle moments that I was talking about a lot earlier. And a lot of it shows in the story with how most of its characters are written, choosing almost cliche tropes at its epicenter, that of a young nerdy hero and a bully in a school setting. We see it almost all the time in superhero media, so it makes you wonder how My Hero subverts it and explores it in a way that hasn't been done before. And to my own surprise, a cliche can turn into a beautifully crafted development over a span of 8 seasons. I think a strong relationship with their rival seems to be one of the most important aspects throughout a shonen plotline. We've seen these typical relationships be transcended, and I know some of these characters might not be from your average shonen series, but I feel like they're good examples regardless. Subaru and Julius, Thorfinn and Escalade, and Eren and Reiner. These characters are not only entertaining on screen, but even change the entire idea of what it means to be a rival. Deku and Bakugo stand as a typical shonen rival dynamic, that of those just trying to one-up each other, but ends up breaking the normal structure with its depth. Now, how writers can execute these kinds of ideas can be done in a few ways through character foils, subtlety, and archetypes. Starting with archetypes, Bakugo and Deku take up some uncommon roles. At first, Deku takes up the title as the chosen one, but we see the story as the hero get flipped on his head when the passion he's dreamed of all of his life becomes a burden that eventually crushes his passion. On the other hand, Bakugo plays the role of an antagonist on the path of a protagonist, learning the values of a traditional main character. These untraditional tropes create space for the writer to explore something deeper and more introspective. What I specifically like about these two is the idea that Horikoshi explores these two tropes, links them with connection, and ultimately turns it into what drives the story forward. I think there are a lot of moments where these two characters are the plot and nothing else matters except the conflict between them, and combat choreo becomes communication. While Deku became incredibly strong due to One for All, he still understands the implications of how unfair it was to Bakugo as well as the rest of the world, so in turn Deku has always treated Bakugo like a friend. This makes Deku more of a true hero than he was before. Bakugo had always resented this side of him because even before Deku got his quirk, he always felt like Deku was ahead of him in becoming a hero, because ultimately Deku's mindset had always surpassed his and was a threat to his dream. The bigger picture is displayed through a character foil between each other and then can be viewed through the lens of a parallel of their mentors. Now obviously All Might and Endeavor are both mentors of both of our characters, but if we align each one with Deku and Bakugo, we get a pretty good matchup. Deku and All Might are a pretty obvious parallel, so I want to take a look at Bakugo's character as he's a major sector in the story that makes it so much more interesting. So throughout the series, Bakugo's qualities have been compared to All Might's. You know, the hero names, the consistent smile, the raw power in both of their attacks. Well, in reality, Bakugo is much more comparable to Endeavor. Even All Might said it himself. They were both characters on redemption looking to atone, but this is where it can get a lot more interesting. Bakugo can also be seen as a foil of Endeavor, just as another younger version of him that never gave up. Both Bakugo and Endeavor's internal complex was their everlasting ego and pride that always took hold of them whenever a moment arose to become a true hero. And throughout the story, we saw Endeavor always try to surpass All Might, but no matter how hard he tried, he was never able to close the gap between them. The primary conflict at hand here is that Endeavor couldn't drop the ego in front of All Might until it was already too late. They're almost juxtaposed in the same light, as confusing as that might sound. Endeavor was really never able to get help from All Might because of his ego, in the same way Bakugo struggles to get help from Deku. And the zenith of this conflict is done so beautifully in a way that I've never seen before. Bakugo's primary conflict is introspective and hopeful. The way it's explored is done through character learning. The main driving force behind Bakugo's character is the idea that he's learning more about himself and making adjustments, so it's when we see Bakugo learn from a long-lasting mistake that's been going on since both Deku and Bakugo were kids, is when we can really see the beauty of My Hero. And it's all done through the symbolism of hands. The animation for Season 8 Episode 3 is absolutely breathtaking, and for very good reason. It's the apex of all the development Deku and Bakugo have had. Bakugo has always pushed away Deku throughout his whole life and has never once taken his hand when he tried to help. And once he realized how Deku never once resented him, Bakugo wasn't going to make that same mistake again. This marked the first time that Bakugo had reached his hand in return, allowing their relationship to go full circle. Part of the reason why this is so cool is because it ties into Bakugo's arc so well. Not only is the character arc for Deku and Bakugo's connection complete, it also marks the end of Bakugo's guilt towards All Might, and this brings out an even cooler moment later on in his awakening. We can see the results of this in a moment that culminates a part of the entire series where he feels like he can become a better hero than Midoriya after all the development he's had. It's something that sticks with you, as it's amazing how Horikoshi can keep writing this character after 7 seasons of development and for it to just keep getting better. It's so good, and Bones knew it was good too. That's why they added Vincent Chansert on top of what was already a very poetic moment. And while this episode is really important to growth and development, what's even more important is how it ties into the overall themes. And while this episode primarily caters to Bakugo's character arc, it also serves as an example to the rest of the cast, that even without One For All, the way to truly catch up with Deku is to think like him. Being the greatest hero can't be shown just through action, and what ultimately surpasses both of them as heroes was their combined efforts. That's why Deku and Bakugo had clashing ideologies throughout the series, because that was the catalyst to help both of them grow. And as All Might puts it, save people to win, and win to save people. My Hero Academia always delivers on the moments that it should. And while a lot of people like MHA, it's still painfully underrated from the rest of the shonen environment. I believe MHA's final season revealed almost all of its invisible ink. Bones did something that changed the series forever by making an already beautifully crafted moment and turning it into something that much greater. I love Bakugo's arc. I love how it ties into Deku's arc. I love how it shows Bakugo came full circle, showing how Bakugo changed from calling him quirkless from beginning to end. The series has just come a long way and has impacted me a lot. It's just beautiful development.